My name is Maeve Harrington. On the outside, my life looks like something out of a magazine spread. A husband, David, 2 kids, a beautiful home in Connecticut. We host Sunday dinners, wave to our neighbors, live the kind of life people point to and say, that's stability. That's success. But if you peel back the layers, stability can feel like suffocation. I didn't intend to betray David. I didn't walk into my marriage planning to burn it down. It started quietly, almost innocently, like the first gust of wind before a storm. I met him in New York during a business trip, Dorian Klein. He had this rare kind of presence, the kind that doesn't ask for attention, it simply commands it. And when he looked at me, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. He didn't see me as David's wife or as someone's mother. He saw me. Maeve. That night, back in my hotel room, I stared at my reflection, knowing something had already shifted. I told myself I could stop. I told myself I would stop. But when Dorian called, I answered. And that was it. The beginning of a second life. One in Connecticut, with David and the children. Another in Manhattan, in Dorian's arms. For a while, I convinced myself I could balance both, that I could keep the worlds separate. And for a while, I did. People ask me sometimes, well, they would if they knew, how could you possibly marry 2 men at once? And I'd tell them, you'd be surprised what you can get away with if you learn to lie without blinking. Dorian never knew about David, not once. To him, I was a free woman, beautiful, available, and completely his. I built that illusion brick by brick. I invented a backstory that erased my suburban life in Connecticut. No kids, no husband, no white picket fence. Just Maeve, the ambitious consultant who lived between cities and hated to be tied down. That's how I explained the nights I couldn't see him, the weekends I disappeared. Work. Always work. Dorian loved that about me, actually, that I was independent, mysterious, a little untouchable. He never pried. He thought he was being respectful. I thought, thank God. When he proposed, I didn't hesitate. It was reckless, yes, but also intoxicating. A second life. Fully mine. A second chance at the love story I felt I'd missed out on. And here's the secret no one knows. I had another passport. Irish. Years before, because of my grandmother from Cork, I stood in line at the consulate, handed over birth certificates and fees, and walked out with a burgundy booklet I tucked into a drawer and forgot. When Dorian proposed, I took it out. We flew to Dublin and married quietly at the registry office. I used my mother's maiden name. The clerk took the Irish passport number, stamped our forms, smiled, and wished us well. We never registered anything in the States. No alarms, no red flags, nothing to connect me back to David. We married quietly, in a civil ceremony. No family, no fuss. He said it was romantic, just the 2 of us. I knew it was convenient. No questions, no relatives, no risk of anyone recognizing me. After the vows, he slipped a gold band onto my finger. I kept David's ring too, but I learned to rotate them. Sometimes I wore one, sometimes the other, sometimes both stacked together, a secret so close to the surface it burned. For 5 years, I lived like this. David thought I was his loyal wife. Dorian thought I was his new bride, and neither of them ever suspected the truth. At least, not then. If you'd seen me from the outside, you would have thought I was just another working woman, tired, busy, always on the move. But that's the beauty of it. No one looks twice at a woman with a suitcase and a calendar full of meetings. That was my cover. Business trips, conferences, late-night calls with clients in another time zone. It explained everything. The absences, the excuses, the 2 phones I always kept close to me like oxygen tanks. One phone was for David, my husband in Connecticut. The man who gave me stability, Sunday dinners, family holidays, a sense of home. The other was for Dorian, my husband in New York, the man who gave me passion, late-night wine, rooftop sunsets, and the thrill of being someone else. I learned to live between phones, between rings on my finger, between 2 versions of myself. When one phone buzzed, the other stayed locked away. I had systems, separate credit cards, hotel loyalty accounts under different details, calendars coded so carefully even I sometimes forgot which story I'd told. And when David asked why I couldn't make Thanksgiving, I was in Chicago for a client. When Dorian wanted me at his friend's wedding? A contract overseas I couldn't miss. They bought it, every time. But the truth is, it wasn't just lies, it was desire. Because here's the part no one wants to admit. I loved them both. David, with his steady kindness, his predictability, the way he'd pour my coffee just the way I liked without even asking. And Dorian, with his intensity, his danger, his way of making me feel like I was on fire every time he touched me. People think affairs are about choosing one man over the other. But what if you can't? What if the only way to have everything you crave is to split yourself in two? I wasn't just lying to them. I was lying to myself, pretending that someday I'd be able to choose, pretending that the secret could last forever. But secrets always have an expiration date. And mine was closer than I thought. I thought I could balance it all forever. 2 husbands, 2 homes, 2 versions of me. But then, the test turned positive. Pregnant. At first, I couldn't breathe, because how do you explain a baby when you live 2 lives? How do you tell David, the man who believed we were building a family, when the father might not be him? And how do you tell Dorian, who thought he'd married my independence, not my secrets? The weeks after that were a blur of terror and denial. I kept telling myself it would be okay, that somehow the dates would line up and I could point to one man and say, yes, it's yours. But deep down, I knew the truth would be messier. So I did the test. Quietly. Alone. The kind of test that doesn't lie. Dorian. The child was his. When I saw the result, my hands shook so badly I nearly dropped it. A piece of paper that could destroy everything. For days I carried it folded in my purse, pressed flat like a secret weapon I never wanted to use. Every time David kissed me goodnight, every time he asked about baby names, I thought, you don't know. And every time Dorian held me close, whispering how much he loved me, I thought, if you knew, you'd never forgive me. So I told no one, not in the first month, not in the second, not in the third. I carried the lie as my belly grew, layering excuses over questions, dodging suspicions with the same skill I'd built my double life on. By the time I reached the 8th month, I was exhausted from hiding, from pretending the baby belonged to both men, when I knew it belonged only to one. Every kick reminded me of the truth. Every glance in the mirror showed me a secret I couldn't hide much longer. And still, I kept silent, because once the truth was spoken, my carefully built world would come crashing down. And I wasn't ready to watch it burn. Not yet. I always thought if anyone uncovered my secret, it would be David or Dorian, maybe a stray text, a call answered at the wrong time, some slip in the stories I'd been weaving for years, but it wasn't them. It was my daughter, Sarah. One evening I came home late. My phone buzzed on the counter, and before I could grab it, she picked it up. Just a child's innocent curiosity. Only the message glowing on the screen wasn't innocent at all. It was from Dorian. Her face changed when she read it. Confusion first, then anger, then something I can't describe. Betrayal, maybe. That night she cornered me in the kitchen. Her voice didn't sound like a child's anymore. It was sharp, heavy with judgment. Mom, who is he? If you don't end this, I'll tell Dad. And if I do, I'm leaving with him. So will my brother. You'll lose us. Her words cut deeper than anything either man had ever said to me. I could live with David's disappointment. I could survive Dorian's heartbreak. But losing my children? That was a death I couldn't bear. I tried to reason with her, to explain the unexplainable. But what excuse can you give your daughter for betraying her father, for living 2 lives under the same roof? There was no defense, no way out. So I made a decision. I would go to New York one last time. I would look Dorian in the eye, feel his arms around me one final time, and then I would let him go. Because Sarah was right. If I didn't choose, I would lose everything. And for the first time, I realized the choice wasn't about love anymore. It was about survival. The train to New York rattled beneath me like a pulse. My mind was already there, rehearsing what I would say to Dorian, how I could possibly end something that felt eternal. I stared at the city skyline on the horizon, clutching my bag like it held the answers. That's when they came. A group of young men, shadows moving through the carriage, eyes sharp, smiles sharpers. One of them pointed at my wrist. My watch. A gift from Dorian. Gold, sleek, expensive enough to make me a target. "Hand it over," he hissed. I was ready, I would have given it. A watch is just metal after all. But before I could slip it off, one shoved me. Hard. My body tilted, belly first, the world tilting with me, and then nothing but the sound of my head hitting the floor and a blur of voices dissolving into black. When I opened my eyes, everything was white. A ceiling, bright lights, the steady beep of a machine keeping time. My body ached, my lips tasted of iron. And then I heard her voice, calm, clipped, professional. A nurse. The train to New York rattled beneath me like a pulse. My mind was already there, rehearsing what I would say to Dorian, how I could possibly end something that felt eternal. I stared at the city skyline on the horizon, clutching my bag like it held the answers. That's when they came. A group of young men, shadows moving through the carriage, eyes sharp, smiles sharper. One of them pointed at my wrist. My watch. A gift from Dorian. Gold, sleek, expensive enough to make me a target. "Hand it over," he hissed. I was ready. I would have given it. A watch is just metal after all. But before I could slip it off, one shoved me. Hard. My body tilted, belly first, the world tilting with me. And then nothing but the sound of my head hitting the floor and a blur of voices dissolving into black. When I opened my eyes, everything was white. A ceiling, bright lights, the steady beep of a machine keeping time. My body ached, my lips tasted of iron. And then I heard her voice, calm, clipped, professional, a nurse. "You need to stay calm," she said. "The baby is in distress. We can't wait any longer. You have to give birth, now." In that instant, the double life, the lies, the men, none of it mattered. All I cared about was the child. Every thought, every ounce of strength, every desperate prayer went to keeping her safe. Nothing else existed. Nothing else mattered. The delivery felt endless. Hours of pain, sweat, and fear, until suddenly it wasn't fear anymore. It was sound. A high, piercing cry that shattered everything around me. My daughter. They placed her in my arms, so small, so fragile, her skin flushed with life. In that moment, the world stopped spinning. Nothing mattered but her tiny heartbeat pressed against mine. But then the world started moving again. The door opened, and there he was. Dorian. His face pale, his eyes frantic, as if he'd run from the edge of the earth to get here. "I heard about the train," he said, his voice cracking. "I had to come. Maeve, are you—" He stopped when he saw the baby. His expression changed, softened, until he looked almost undone. "She's beautiful," he whispered. And for a few stolen seconds, it felt almost right. A family moment. The three of us suspended in a fragile illusion, but reality doesn't wait. Back in Connecticut, David was pacing the kitchen. He always expected a message, a call when I arrived. This time, nothing. My phone was gone. Lost somewhere between the train and the chaos. His worry must have been growing with every silent minute. I couldn't let him drown in suspicion, so I borrowed a phone from one of the nurses. My voice trembled, but I forced it steady. "David, it's me. Everything's fine. I just lost my phone. Don't worry." He sighed with relief, and I let him believe the lie. But I wasn't done. There was another call I had to make, the one I feared most, to my daughter. Her voice was sharp when she picked up. She hadn't forgiven me, not after what she'd discovered. "Please," I begged. "Don't tell your father. Not yet. I just gave birth. I need time." There was silence on the line, then a cold reply. "You don't have much time, Mom." I hung up, clutching my newborn tighter. Because even as life began in my arms, I knew the life I'd built was collapsing around me. Leaving the hospital with Dorian felt like stepping into a dream, only it wasn't mine. When I came back to Dorian's house with the baby, The air was thick with celebration. His parents had decorated the porch with strings of balloons that swayed gently in the wind, the bright colors almost too cheerful against the weight pressing on my chest. As soon as I stepped through the door, laughter burst around me like confetti. Cousins, siblings, neighbors, everyone had gathered. His mother rushed first, her arms warm and trembling as she pulled me into an embrace. "Our little miracle," she whispered, kissing my cheek before turning to cradle the baby as if her were the sun itself, destined to light their whole world. His father's eyes shone with pride, and someone uncorked a bottle of champagne in the kitchen. Glasses clinked, voices rose, a chorus of joy. I smiled, wide enough for the photographs, wide enough to convince them all. "I'm just tired," I told them when they noticed the shadows under my eyes. And they nodded, sympathetic, no one questioning me. Inside, though, I was unraveling. Every balloon, every laugh, every hand that reached out to touch my daughter's tiny fingers only deepened the ache in me. They saw a happy mother, a glowing partner, the beginning of a perfect future. And all I could think was how fragile the walls of my double life had become, and how easily one word, one slip, could shatter it all. That night, while Dorian slept, his arm draped protectively around me, I sat at the desk with a pen in my hand. The baby's quiet breathing filled the silence as I wrote the words that broke me. "Dorian, I don't even know how to begin this letter because no words could ever explain what I'm about to do. All I know is that I love you. I have loved you in a way that feels infinite, and that is what makes this goodbye unbearable. But I have to go. Please don't ask me why. Please don't try to find me. There are things I cannot change, paths I cannot walk, and as much as I wish it were different, I can't stay by your side. If I do, I'll only hurt you more than these words already do. Remember the happiness we shared, the laughter, the quiet moments no one else will ever know? Keep those, because they were real, and they meant everything to me. Don't search for me, Dorian. Don't waste your heart chasing after someone who can't give you the life you deserve. Goodbye, my love. I will carry you with me always. Maeve." I left the letter on the nightstand, kissed his forehead one last time, and slipped out into the dark. I drove his car all the way to Connecticut, my hands shaking on the wheel, the baby bundled beside me. At the hospital, I found a nurse willing to look the other way. Money can buy silence, and I had plenty. I begged her to pretend I had given birth there, to erase the truth and stitch a new reality I could step into. And she agreed. When David arrived, his face was pale with confusion. His first words cut into me. "Why didn't you call me? Why didn't I know?" I forced a tired smile, let the exhaustion in my voice do the work. "I lost my phone. It all happened so fast. I just needed you now." He believed me. He took the baby in his arms, pride softening every line of his face. Then he wrapped his free arm around me, guiding me out of the hospital and into the life I'd chosen. Home. As if nothing had ever happened. As if there weren't two lives, two men, and a truth buried in a letter hundreds of miles away. I left Dorian's car in a parking lot downtown, miles away from our neighborhood. I didn't dare bring it home, too many questions I couldn't answer. My plan was simple: rest for a few days, heal, let my body recover, and then quietly return it to New York. By then, maybe Dorian would find it. Maybe he'd understand the message. I was gone, but inside I was unraveling. I hid the second phone in a drawer, turned off, as if silence could erase everything. I avoided mirrors, avoided thinking about the letter, avoided the truth. David noticed. He watched me carefully in those first days back. His eyes lingered on me when I cradled the baby, searching for something that wasn't there. I wasn't the same. I couldn't be. "You're different," he said one night. "When we had the other two, you couldn't stop smiling. But now, you feel far away." I brushed him off, blamed exhaustion, the trauma of a difficult labor, but I could see suspicion flicker behind his eyes. And then, He acted on it. While I napped with the baby one afternoon, David went through my things, my bag, my papers, the lies I thought I had buried deep. When I woke, he was standing in the doorway. In his hand, my other passport, the one I thought was safe, the one stamped with travel that didn't exist in the life he knew. His voice was low, unsteady, almost trembling. "Maeve, what is this?" And in that moment, I realized the walls I had built weren't just cracking. They were collapsing. Dorian hadn't stopped. From the moment I disappeared, he fought against the silence. The police told him he had to wait 3 days before filing a missing persons report. 3 days. To him, it sounded like an eternity. He couldn't bear it. So instead, he claimed his car as stolen. That gave the police a reason to act. They found it the next day, parked carelessly and a lot hours away from New York. Too neat, too deliberate. Dorian knew. He followed the trail, hunting not just for a car, but for me. By the time he reached Connecticut, desperation was all that kept him moving. He carried a photo of me, of us, and showed it to anyone who would look. A cashier, a neighbor, a nurse outside a clinic. Someone must have recognized me. Someone must have pointed him to the place I had tried to keep hidden. My house. And at that exact moment, inside those walls, my fragile lie was tearing apart. David stood in the living room, my other passport trembling in his hand. His eyes, wide and sharp, pierced through me with the weight of betrayal. The stamp glared back at him, undeniable proof that there was a whole life he didn't know about. "Maeve, what is this? Who are you?" His voice cracked, not with anger, but with something worse. Fear. And then the doorbell rang. The chime cut through the room like a blade. David froze, still clutching the passport. My heart stopped. I knew before the sound even faded who it was. Dorian had found me. And now, the walls of both lives I had built were collapsing. Together. From the top of the stairs, I could see everything without even stepping closer. David stood at the open door, still holding my passport in one hand like a piece of evidence, and in the other, gripping the doorframe as if it might hold him up. On the porch, Dorian stood frozen with a photograph of me in his palm, his thumb pressed against my smile. Behind him, the evening light poured in like a spotlight. In front of him, on the wall near the entrance, hung our family photo, David, me, and the children smiling at a summer picnic. It was like the universe had decided to hang my crime in plain sight. They looked at each other, but no words came out. Their eyes were saying everything: accusation, realization, pain. My chest burned as if my ribs were made of glass. I felt the blood drain from my body. Each step down the stairs was like walking deeper into a nightmare I had built with my own hands. I had spent years juggling phones, plane tickets, and excuses, convincing myself I could keep two worlds spinning forever. But now, watching the two men who loved me, and whom I loved, standing face to face, I felt the walls closing in. The guilt was a physical weight. My throat locked, my palms went cold, my heart pounded so hard it hurt. For the first time in years, there were no more lies left to hide behind. And yet, under all that terror, there was also a strange, painful relief. The running was over. The secret was ending here, tonight, whether I wanted it to or not. I reached the last step, my hand trembling on the railing, and I knew I couldn't sink into lies anymore. Whatever happened next, the only way out was through the truth. I froze on the bottom step, the air thick enough to choke me. David's eyes were sharp, demanding answers I wasn't ready to give. Dorian's gaze was softer but no less piercing. It carried betrayal, confusion, and the sting of hope slipping away. Inside me, two lives clashed like storms. On one side there was David, the man who had been my anchor through years of routine, of raising our two children together. The man who knew the shape of my laughter, the rhythm of our mornings, the quiet comfort of evenings when the kids were finally asleep. With him, I had built a home, a history, a legacy. And those children, they were part of me, part of us. How could I rip myself away from them? On the other side, there was Dorian, the fire I never expected. the man who made me feel alive in ways I hadn't thought possible anymore. And now, there was her, the little girl I had carried through months of lies and guilt, the child whose heartbeat still echoed in my chest. I had named her Aurora because she was my dawn in the darkest night, a part of me and a part of him. How could I choose? Every part of me ached because I loved them both. Not the same way, never the same way, but deeply, truly, enough to make this moment unbearable. And yet, as I looked at their faces, I saw no love staring back at me. Only anger, only hurt. It felt like the floor was crumbling beneath me, like I was dangling between two worlds, and both were about to let me fall. For years I thought I was in control, juggling, hiding, pretending. But now, with David's hand tightening around the passport and Dorian clutching my photo like a ghost of me he'd lost, I realized the truth. I had already lost. And maybe both men hated me now. The silence between us was louder than any scream. I wanted to speak, to beg for forgiveness, to explain how one heart can betray itself by loving too much. But no words came. Only the suffocating thought. No matter what I say, I will lose someone I cannot live without. My lips trembled, but I forced myself to speak. My voice was barely more than a whisper, shaking with guilt. David, I need to explain. His face turned red, his body stiff with rage. Explain? Explain? He shouted, his voice crashing through the house. You've been lying to me, sleeping with him, raising 2 families under my roof. Do you have any idea what you've done to me, to our kids? The words stabbed deeper than any knife. Dorian stepped forward, his voice calm but fierce. Stop yelling at her. This isn't helping. David snapped his head toward him like a predator. You stole my wife, He lunged and shoved Dorian hard, nearly knocking him against the doorframe. Enough! Dorian's voice cracked, his own anger flashing. I didn't know about you, about any of this. I swear, if I had... He stopped, his voice breaking. His eyes turned to me, glassy with tears. Maeve, whose child is Aurora? The world seemed to pause. David's breath hitched. Dorian's hands shook. I couldn't bring myself to say it. Instead, with tears streaming down my face, I pulled the folded paper from my pocket. My hand trembled as I handed it to him. He opened it, scanning the DNA results. His lips parted and a smile flickered through the devastation on his face. Relief. Joy. But it was tangled with pain so raw it nearly crushed me. She's mine, he whispered, holding the paper like a sacred relic. His eyes lifted to me, pleading, desperate. Why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you leave him? I couldn't answer. My sobs drowned out every word I wanted to say. David stood still now, no longer shouting. His fury burned out into something worse. Defeat. His shoulders slumped, his eyes hollow. The man who had built a life with me looked at me as if I were a stranger. You had a child with him under my nose, and I never even noticed. His voice was flat, broken. The silence after his words was unbearable. I turned back to Dorian, my heart splitting in two. You need to go, I whispered, shaking my head, begging him with my eyes. Please, leave. His face twisted in anguish. Maeve, don't do this. Don't push me away. I have no choice, I cried. I can't lose my children. Please, just go. His jaw tightened, tears streaking down his face. He looked at me one last time, then at the newborn in the crib beside me. His voice dropped to a promise, cold and unshakable. I'll leave tonight, but I swear, Maeve, I will take Aurora from you. She's my daughter, and I will not lose her. He turned and walked out, the sound of the door slamming echoing like thunder through the house. I collapsed onto the floor, the paper still trembling in David's hand, and felt my world collapse with it. When the door shut behind Dorian, the silence swallowed us whole. Only Aurora's soft breaths filled the room. David wouldn't look at me. He just stared at the floor, the passport still in his hand, like it burned him. I gathered every ounce of courage and tried to speak. David, Please, just listen. I never wanted to hurt you. I was lost, I was struggling, and he raised his hand, cutting me off. His voice was low, raw. Don't. I don't want to hear excuses. Do you even understand what you've done? You betrayed me, Maeve. You betrayed our children. I still love you, I whispered, tears streaming down my face. I love this family. Please don't let this destroy us. His shoulders trembled, but he didn't soften. I need time. I can't stay here tonight. I'm taking the kids and leaving for a while. Panic shot through me. No, David, please don't take them. Don't punish them for my mistakes. We can fix this. We can save what we built. He looked at Aurora's crib, his jaw tightening. His voice cracked with bitterness. You want me to raise another man's child? Every time I'd look at her, I'd see him. I can't do it, Maeve. I won't. The words cut me open. I felt the ground give way beneath me, and I realized the truth I had been running from. There was no world where I could keep everything. I had to choose. David's eyes met mine, hollow and exhausted. It's simple. You want your family? Then give Aurora to him. Choose us or choose her and lose everything else. I looked at him, at the man I had built a life with, the father of my 2 children, and then at the crib where Aurora slept, so small, so innocent. My heart screamed at me that she was part of me too, part of my truth. The decision tore me in half, but I knew. I won't give her away, I whispered, my voice shaking but firm. She's my daughter. I can't let her go. David's face twisted, grief mixed with rage. I'm not asking you to leave, I said quietly, swallowing sobs. This is your house, our children's house. I'll go. Aurora and we'll leave. The words tasted like poison. My knees buckled, but I forced myself to stay upright. David didn't stop me. He didn't argue. He just stood there, broken, silent. And in that silence, I felt the last threads of our marriage snap. The apartment I rented in the city center felt more like a waiting room than a home. The walls were bare, the furniture sparse, but Aurora's crib in the corner made it ours, at least for now. The hardest part wasn't the loneliness. It was the silence from my elder daughter, Sarah. She hadn't spoken to me once since that night. Her anger was sharp, like a knife she carried everywhere. But Mark, sweet Mark. He would call when David wasn't around, whispering into the phone like we were conspirators. Sometimes he'd sneak over, his backpack slung on one shoulder, just to hold his baby sister and remind me that I wasn't completely erased from their lives. Then, one morning, an envelope slid beneath my door. Inside was a letter from a lawyer, petition for parental rights. My hands trembled. Dorian was moving to claim Aurora. That night, I called him. My voice cracked, but I asked him to meet. We sat across from each other in a small cafe, Aurora sleeping between us in her stroller. I forced myself to tell him everything, every lie, every reason, every twisted justification for the years of deceit. By the time I finished, his eyes were red, his fists clenched, but he hadn't left. Maeve, he said finally, his voice trembling, I can try to forgive you. For Aurora's sake, maybe we can try again, start fresh, be a family. My heart lurched. A part of me wanted nothing more than to say yes, to run into his arms, to let him heal the wounds I had torn open. But the reality was a prison I couldn't escape. No, I whispered, tears spilling down my cheeks. I love you, Dorian. God, I do. But if I choose you, David will never let me see my children again. He'll shut me out of their lives forever. I can't lose them. Not both worlds, not all of them. He shook his head, pain written all over him. Then what do you want from me, Maeve? You can't have it both ways anymore. I reached across the table, touching his hand. I'm not asking for both. I'm asking for mercy. Please don't drag this into court. Don't tear Aurora apart. I'll let you see her. I'll let you take her, spend time with her, know her. Just don't make me lose the rest of my family in the process. For a long moment, he said nothing. His eyes searched mine, full of love and betrayal, hope and devastation. Finally, he exhaled. his voice low and breaking. "I don't know if I can forgive you, but for Aurora, I'll try. I won't take her from you. Not yet." I nodded, relief washing over me, though it came with no joy, because in that moment, I realized, no matter how many compromises I made, no matter how many pieces of myself I gave away, someone would always lose. And so would I. David said he would never forgive me, and for a long time, I believed him. The only reason he let me back into our home was because Mark and Sarah begged him to. He really loved his children, and he couldn't keep tearing them apart just to punish me. Mark missed me deeply. My boy needed his mother, even if he didn't always know how to say it. His calls, his secret visits, all of it was his way of holding on, of reminding me that no matter what had happened, I was still his mom. Sarah's anger burned longer, but she was still a child at heart. Underneath the hurt and silence, she longed for me too. Slowly, her heart softened, the sharp edges of her resentment dulling with time, until one day she let me back in. Not fully, but enough for me to feel her love again. Still, when I first stepped inside again with Aurora in my arms, it didn't feel like a victory. It felt fragile, like glass that could shatter at any moment. David didn't welcome me with open arms, but he didn't push me out either. That was enough. At first, we lived like polite neighbors. Careful words, stiff silence at dinner, shared responsibilities without warmth. But slowly, almost imperceptibly, something shifted. For the sake of the children, he began to try. Not for me, for them. And in that trying, I saw a man I hadn't truly looked at in years. I didn't think he was capable of forgiveness. But he is trying. And when I see him hold Aurora with kindness, when I see his hand steady as he rocks her to sleep, I realize something. Maybe forgiveness isn't about forgetting. Maybe it's about choosing love despite the memory of pain. As for Dorian, he moved on. He met another woman. When I first found out, I felt fury like fire in my veins. How dare he? How dare he love someone else when I still loved him? But then it hit me. It was better this way. Better for him, better for me, better for everyone. I still love him. I still love David. That's the cruelest truth of all. My heart never chose, but life forced me to, and I chose my family. Dorian visits Aurora once a month. She lights up when she sees him, babbling, reaching for his arms. I don't know what she'll call him when she grows older. I don't know what she'll call David either. Maybe she'll call them both Dad, just like I once called them both my husband. Sometimes at night, when the house is quiet and Aurora is sleeping beside me, I drift back into the past. Memories come uninvited, sharp and heavy, like stones pressed against my chest. I remember one evening in particular. David thought I was sick and lying in bed with a fever. I even put a wet towel on my forehead so it would look convincing when he checked on me. But as soon as he left the house with the children, I dressed quickly, wiped my face, and went to meet Dorian. I remember the rush in my veins, the trembling of my hands, the way my heart pounded not only from excitement, but from fear of being caught. I kissed Dorian, pretending the world wasn't crashing under my lies. And when I returned home, I lay under the blanket again, eyes half closed, whispering to David that I was exhausted. He stroked my hair gently, and guilt burned me from the inside, but I buried it. I feel ashamed now. Ashamed of the lies, the secrets, the stolen moments that once felt like love but now taste bitter in my memory. I ask myself why I acted this way. Was it fear of losing love? Was it the hunger to feel alive, to be seen fully? Or maybe I was too weak to choose, and in trying to hold on to both, I ended up breaking everything. If I could go back, I would never do it again. Not because I no longer loved them, I did with all my heart, but because I brought pain to too many people. I tore apart trust, I wounded David, I hurt Dorian, and I confused my children, who only ever wanted a safe, steady home. Now all I can do is promise myself, and Aurora, that this story will not poison her life. She will never carry the weight of my mistakes. I will give her honesty, stability, and love without shadows. I will do my best to make sure she grows up knowing she was never a secret, never a mistake, but the reason I finally learned to stop living in lies?